Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2021 Ford Ranger, we're going to be showing you how to install the Demco base plate kit. But before we do that, why don't we check it out and make sure that this is the right base plate for you. So before we get started checking everything out, I figured it'd be useful just to kind of refresh ourselves and touch base on the main components that we're going to need to flat tow our Ranger down the road in the first place. And the first one is going to be that base plate, and that's going to provide us with a solid and reliable connection point. That way we can hook our tow bar up to it. Tow bar is going to be that second component, and this is going to be the physical link that actually connects the front of our truck to the back of our motorhome. The third main component is going to be safety cables, and these are pretty straightforward. You know, those are there in the event of an unlikely disconnect. They're going to keep everything paired together. The fourth main component is going to be tow bar wiring, and what this is going to do is transfer the lighting functions from the back of your RV to the back of your Ford, keeping you safe and legal. And the fifth main component is going to be a braking system, and what this is going to do is apply the brakes in your truck whenever you hit the brakes in your motorhome, helping to bring you to a more predictable and complete stop. There is one thing that I do want to bring up, and that is the use of what's called a high-low adapter. Now in our case here today, we don't need one, but the purpose of the high-low adapter is to make sure your tow bar is riding nice and level. So you may need one, you may not. It's really just going to depend on your setup. But it's easy to figure out, and all you have to do is take a couple of measurements. So what you want to do is pull your truck up to the back of your motorhome, you know, somewhere in this area, and get on level ground. And you're going to measure from the center of the pinhole here in the base plate down to the ground. So just to kind of give you a reference point, ours here today is about 15.5 inches. You know, yours is probably the same. It could vary though on what trim package you have and tire size and everything else. But with that said, you'll record this measurement, and then you're going to measure from the center of your hitch pinhole down to the ground on your motorhome. And you want that measurement to be within 3 inches of each other. That's kind of the rule of thumb there. If you exceed that 3 inches, you can use that high-low adapter. And what you're going to do is choose a high-low adapter that you know, gets those measurements within spec. And if that's something you need, there's a ton of different sizes available right here at eTrailer. So now that we kind of established what we're actually going to need to flat tow our Ranger, let's go ahead and check out the base plate. So this is what it's going to look like whenever you're not pulling your truck behind your motorhome. And truth is, you're probably going to be cruising around town and stuff more often than you're flat towing. And so how it's going to look is going to be pretty important. And I think this one looks really good, actually. You know, I've personally installed all the base plates available for the Ranger. We get a lot of these in here, so I got quite a bit of experience with them. And, you know, compared to some of the other ones, really not too different. You know, they all kind of look right at home. They essentially just replace your tow hooks. And so as far as the appearance goes, honestly, can't really go wrong with any of them. One of the things that I do like about this one is the finish of it. It's going to have like a hammer tone type finish, and, you know, it really, you know, it kind of just looks rugged. So it looks, you know, good on the front of your Ford. I do like the fact that they give you a bracket with the base plate, and it just makes it convenient. You know, that way you can mount up your wiring connector here and everything just kind of matches and goes together. I also like the fact that they give you a couple plugs here. You know, it might not seem like a huge deal, but it's a nice touch. You know, it just keeps everything looking clean, and not to mention it's going to help keep stuff out of your base plate. That way, you know, everything will function smoothly and so on. Speaking of that though, the way you're going to start to hook up, it uses these removable arms, and these are really straightforward. All you're going to have to do is put these into the base plate, rotate it about a quarter turn, and there's going to be some holes that line up with the base plate. You're going to put these pins through just like that. So it feels really solid which is important. You know, you want a good connection point whenever you're getting ready to go down the road. And both sides are going to be set up the same way, so you'll just do the same thing over here. Whenever you're actually ready to hook up to your motorhome and to your tow bar, it's going to be really simple, and a lot of people wonder that. You know, they don't want to mess around and waste a bunch of time on some confusing setup. And that's not the case at all with this one. It's really straightforward. All you're going to have to do is take the tow bar end, line the holes up, and then take your pin and put that pin through. And that's really all there is to it. You know, you're obviously going to have to hook up your other components as well as your safety cable, which are easy to get to. And this base plate is going to work with a variety of different tow bars, even different manufacturers. So for example, today we have a Roadmaster Falcon all-terrain. Now granted, we did have to change out the end of it here. So there's an adapter that will allow these two to pair together, and it's really simple. So there's many different types of adapters for just about all the common tow bars here at eTrailer. So you know, you should be in pretty good shape. If you already happen to have a different type of tow bar, the adapter will allow you to pair everything together. At the end of the day, a base plate kit you really can't go wrong with. You know, it's going to get the job done and be something that you can rely on. As far as the installation goes, really not too bad actually. I've actually installed all of the base plates available for the Ranger, and this was the last one that I haven't done yet. So when I was putting it up, it actually went together really easy, a lot easier than many of the other ones. So it really shouldn't give you a whole lot of issues or take up a lot of your time. Speaking of which though, why don't we go ahead, pull into the garage and put it on together now. To begin our installation, we're going to be here underneath the front of our Ranger, and the first thing we need to do is remove this skid plate here. So there's going to be 4 bolts total that we need to pull out. 2 on each side here in the front, and then 2 towards the center in the back. So I'm going to grab a 15mm socket and get all those removed. Definitely want to support the skid plate when you take this last one out, because that's the last thing holding it up. With all those removed though, you can go ahead, lower this down, and set it to the side for now. So now if we look here around our tow hook, there's going to be a rubber cover, and we need to remove that. So these just pull right off. Get that removed and do the same thing for the other side. Now we can remove the tow hook itself. And I want to mention from this point on, anything we do to one side of the vehicle, we're also going to do to the other side, because it'll be set up the same way. And with that said, I'm going to take a 15mm socket and pull both of these bolts out. And you want to hold on to this hardware as well. So the way that everything's going to work here, we're going to use these factory weld nuts as our attachment points to hold up our base plate. So I'll just give you a quick idea. The holes in the base plate are going to line up with them, and the hole towards the back of the truck, that's going to get a bracket on it, but we'll get to that in a minute. But whenever we're holding that up there, what we're going to do is reuse the factory hardware here. And when we're holding it up, we're going to get this one started first. Just a few threads, you know, hand tight to hold the base plate into position. All of the hardware that we're going to use to secure the base plate, you're going to want to make sure to take some of the included Loctite and apply some to the threads of the bolt. Now with the next set of hands, we can take our base plate, hold that up into position, and do just like we talked about. Get this bolt here towards the front, started hand tight. So for this back hole, now we can take the included bracket. One end of the bracket's going to have a nut welded to it. We want that to face like this. We're going to take our bolt with the Loctite on it and get these started hand tight as well. Now what we're going to do is just temporarily reinstall our skid plate here. And we're doing this because what I've ran into in the past, if you just tighten all the bolts down, since these brackets are, you know, somewhat adjustable, unless you have a really good luck, you know, these potentially might not line up correctly with the skid plate. So what I've done is just took the factory bolts, put them in loosely back here, and slide these in. Take the factory bolts again, and we're just going to get a couple threads started on them. Just enough to kind of hold up our skid plate here. And so now we know, you know, this is lined up. What I'm going to do is take a box wrench, and just this bolt back here that's holding on that bracket, I'm just going to snug this down to keep it in position. That way, once we completely tighten and torque everything, we'll have the confidence knowing that our skid plate is going to line back up where it needs to go. So once I get this snug, I already done the other side. Once I get this snug, we can go ahead, pull our bolts back out. And remove this. That way we can have easier access to the bolts and get them completely tightened and torqued. We can tighten and torque our hardware to the amount specified in the instructions. If you don't have a torque wrench, you can pick one up here at etrailer, or a lot of times you can go to your local auto parts store and they'll have one available to rent. So now what you're going to do to each side is take the included safety cables, and what I've done is just kind of double wrapped them around the frame. And then there's going to be an opening there in the base plate. You can take one of the D-links and connect those cables to the base plate. And what I usually do, and what I did in this case as well, is just use some zip ties, just kind of zip tie everything together. Try to keep it tight. That way when you're driving down the road, you know, this isn't going to be bouncing around and making a ton of noise. With that all complete, at this point we can go ahead and reinstall our skid plate the opposite way. And I have it loosely up there, and you can see even with the base plate tight, everything lines up the way it should. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Demco base plate kit here on our 2021 Ford Ranger.